Recuerda que las penas se van cantando. Tú las sabes. Todito de Rubén Blades, de Rosario, la Ponceña.
You may not be looking for the promised land,
guitar on fire. Desire. She's a candle burning in my room. Needle spoon over the counter with that shotgun. Pretty soon, everybody got one. I'm a needle, I'm beside her. Desire, desire, right? And the fever getting higher. Desire, desire. Dollars, she's my protection. Yeah, she's a promise in the year of election. Oh, sister, I can't let you go. Like a preacher stealing hearts at a traveling show. For love of money, 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 and fever getting higher. Everything. She loves to move, she loves to groove, she loves a lot of things. All night, oh, every night. So hold tight, ooh, baby, hold tight. Oh, she said, any way you want it, that's the way you need it, any way you want it. She said, any way you want it, that's the way you need it, any way you want it. She lays her down, he frowns. Gee, my life's a funny thing. Am I still too young? He kissed the man there. She took his ring, took his babies. It took him minutes, took her nowhere. Heaven knows she'd have taken anything. All night. She was a young American. Young American, young American. She was the young American. All night. She was the young American. All the way from Washington. Her breadwinner begs off the bathroom floor. Live for just these 20 years. Do we have to die for the 50 more? All night. He wants the young America. Young America. So young America. He wants the young America. All right. All right. But he wants the young America. Remember your President Nixon? Do you remember the bills you have to pay? Or even yesterday? You ain't a pepper, you ain't a horse, a dirt's got a carry and a lady got a dice. Let's got the stand, weight's got a soul train, mama's got cramps and look at your handshake. I heard the news today, oh boy. You gotta be here. If you're a man, you can say no more. If you're a woman, I can suck on the jaw. If you're retired, I can help with that judging. If you're a band, I can write before they die. Ain't you proud that you struck our faces? Ain't there one damn song that can make me break down and cry? Of setting those meetings up for later in the month. This week, I'm doing pretty much town halls and radio, so it won't be this week and probably won't be next week because I've got some things I need to take care of in DC, but the week after and the week after.
Can you, just quickly explain how SR or House Resolution 5729?
No.
Okay.
722.
Born in the USA, I was born in the USA. I was born in the USA. Born in the USA. Now got in a little hard time jam. So they put a rifle in my hands. Sent me off to a She had the whole show, and that's a natural fact. Up all night with the king. I got to tell ya, poker's his thing. Booze and ladies, keep me right. As long as we can make it to the show tonight, we're an American land. We're an American land. We come into your town, we'll help you party down.
Let me get Alex to. Oh, good. There we go. Perfect. Good timing. Thank you.
Right.
Let me get this out of the way.
Okay. Good. Good evening. Welcome to Congressman Burgess's Town Hall. My name is Cindy Lawton. I'm currently serving as the president of the Board of Trustees of the Keller ISD. And since you're in a Keller ISD facility, they asked me to welcome you. The first thing we're going to start with is an opening prayer, and Reverend Keith Sanders is here from First Baptist Euless. Oh, First Baptist Keller. I don't know where that came from.
Thank you. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for a beautiful day that you've provided. Thank you for the health that we all enjoy to be here. You tell us in your word to pray for all those who are in authority over us, and we know that government is your idea. It's a gift from you. And so, Lord, we pray for our local leaders, we pray for our state leaders, international leaders, in all the branches, executive and legislative and judicial. We also pray for our school board, and we pray for our superintendent and all of our first responders, all of those who are charged, Lord, with protecting us, especially our military personnel at home and abroad. Lord, you tell us in James 1:5, if we need wisdom, you'll grant it. And all of our leaders need wisdom. I thank you for Dr. Burgess and his presence here tonight. I pray for his wisdom and for all those who make decisions that affect all of us. And Father, I pray now you would bless everyone who is here tonight. Give us safety as we travel home. And we thank you for the freedom that we enjoy here. Help us not to take it for granted. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Keith. Now we're going to be hearing or have participation from the Central High School Air Force ROTC Junior Reserve, and they're going to present the flags, and then we'll say the pledge and the Texas pledge. Please rise for the presentation of the colors.
Color guard, halt, right, face,
Please join the pledge to the American flag.
present, colors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Order, colors. Left, face. Forward, march.
You may be seated. Congressman Michael Burgess was first elected to Congress in 2002 and most recently re-elected in 2016. He represents Texas District 26, which includes a majority of Denton County and parts of Northeast Tarrant County. He serves on the prestigious House Energy and Commerce Committee, where he is the chairman of the Subcommittee on Health. He also serves as a member of the Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations and the Subcommittee on Digital Commerce and Consumer Protection. He is also a member of the House Rules Committee and the Helsinki Commission. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Michael Burgess.
Thank you, Ms. Lawton. Is this microphone live? Good, good. And can we just have a hand for the Air Force ROTC? Those kids did a great job. Pastor Keith, thank you for those encouraging words as we start off this evening. But mostly, I just want to thank you for coming out tonight. It's Tuesday night. Goodness knows there's a million other things you could have done, but you chose to be here, and for that, I thank you. I do not have prepared remarks for this evening because it has been my experience that you don't come to listen to me. You want to be heard. So I think Eric has set up a microphone for us, or is setting up a microphone for us. So generally, how this works is we line up at the microphone and we'll have an opportunity to interact. I'll get to as many of you as I can. I'll try not to be long in my answers. And we'll go to around about 8 o'clock. I do need to be respectful of the custodial staff here, and we need to clear out so they can do their work this evening. But Eric has the microphone. I do need to say as a housekeeping detail, you know, you may go home and people say, I can't believe I missed that town hall that Dr. Burgess did. It is being filmed and it will be available on burgess.house.gov on the official website. And I have had the experience in the past of sometimes a film clip is taken from one of these town halls and then edited, not necessarily for brevity or clarity. Mine will be the official transcript of tonight's meeting, but I do remind everyone that that everything we say is public and on the record, and just ask that you keep your comments respectful and be mindful of the fact that we do have some youngsters here in the audience, so we'll try to have a lively discussion, but keep it respectable. Eric has got the microphone set up, so please, the evening is yours. Please proceed.
All right. Thank you. My name is Laura. I am really excited that just recently, yesterday, was the 53rd birthday of Medicaid. And also last week was the 28th birthday of the ADA. And those are two things that are really meaningful for me because I have a child who is disabled and is medically complex and is very expensive for all of the medical care that he has. Excuse me, the ADA, there's a bill that was recently passed in the House called HR 620, which is basically a rollback of the ADA. And I'm very concerned about that. It's making it easier for businesses to actually not comply. And it's actually going to cost more money for taxpayers to, if this bill passes in the Senate. And it really, it very much concerns me because who doesn't need the ADA? There are many people who are disabled in our country. So that's one of my concerns. Regarding Medicaid, so my son, thankfully, in the state of Texas, receives an MDCP waiver, so which allows him to receive Medicaid based on his need rather than our financial status. And in 2016, I did an analysis of just his medical costs, which were over $600,000, and just him, and that was covered mostly by Medicaid, thankfully. And half of that, or actually a little less than half of that, was covered by our private insurance. So with all of the discussions right now, with cuts that we see being in the news regarding $1.5 trillion or who knows how much more with cuts to Medicaid, I'm certainly very concerned about that. And I know that Texas does take federal funds as well, although Texas decided to not expand Medicaid, so that makes it even more concerning to me in particular. So as a physician who's supposed to do no harm, I'm just curious, could you please share with me, as a mother of a 13-year-old who has cerebral palsy, he's legally blind, he has a spinal fusion, et cetera, and seizures every day. Today he had 7. With all the medications that we have and the treatments that he has, how am I supposed to continue raising my child in my home comfortably if these things are going to be cut, as well as pre-existing conditions, which we all know now is a big discussion regarding health insurance.
Okay, well, you've asked three important questions.
Thank
Let's take
you.
them in order.
Thank you.
On the ADA, HR 620, I believe you referenced, was a bill by Ted Poe down in
Yes,
Houston.
correct.
And the bill was not designed to roll back any protections of the Americans with Disability Act. But and I have had people come to my town halls and say, you know, I run a business and I found myself the recipient of a lawsuit. I had done nothing wrong, but someone drove by and said, I think that you're not in compliance with the ADA, and filed a lawsuit before there was any discussion of any problem or what I might have done or what I might be able to do to come into compliance. It was simply fire the lawsuit off. And there is a cost to doing that, obviously. And some businesses will just simply settle the lawsuit because the cost of defending it becomes much more expensive than just simply the cost of the settlement. So it's the sue and settle that has been going on. Ted Poe's bill simply allowed for there to be a one-time effort at reconciliation. Tell the business owner, this is the problem that we perceive, and let that business owner have an opportunity to correct that perceived deficiency in their business.
What is the time frame, sorry, on businesses to comply then under that particular bill?
You know, I don't remember precisely the time frame, but the idea was that you give people an opportunity to work things out before you go to the courtroom. And it was really as simple as that.
And now, the ADA, you know, I mean, it already has stipulations in there, and you can mediate for at least 90 days. And there's a good percentage of all those lawsuits that you're talking about that are actually settled outside of court.
Yeah, but that wasn't the experience. And that's, again, at a town hall, and I believe it was in Keller, Texas, where an individual came to me and said, look, this is the problem that I am having. So, I mean, I heard from it from constituents who are on the other side of the question. The bottom line is no one wants to take away the protections of the ADA, but if there is a way to come to an agreement and solve the problem, that may be a better approach. Now, on the Medicaid issue, and I'm sorry to hear about the troubles that you've had, the health troubles you've had with your child. Grateful that you have received the help you have received from both the state and federal governments in the amount of money that you specified. I don't think that right now or in the last couple of years there have been any cuts proposed to Medicaid.
Tax bill?
There were some reductions in the rate of growth, but the Medicaid expenditures proposed were to grow by 23% a year as opposed to 58% of the year. Not exactly a cut, but perhaps the rate of growth wasn't what some other people had envisioned. But I mean, here's the thing. You want Medicaid to be there and available for people who require it. And as a consequence, it does have to be managed, and the expenditures have to be managed. Medicaid is a shared state and federal responsibility. The state receives a match from the federal government of $57 or 57 cents on every dollar that's spent. So Texas is nowhere near the top recipients, but it's nowhere near the bottom either. They're kind of middle of the pack. But the state made a decision to go with a managed care arrangement several years ago. I can't say that has always gone perfectly, but at the same time, I think there has been a commitment on the people who are involved in that to make certain that does get fixed and that it is right. So we can disagree on that, but I think there is an honest attempt to be able to provide the greatest amount of care to the greatest number of people who need that care. As far as the expansion goes, bear in mind that your situation falls into what is the mandatory Medicaid population, blind, age, disabled, children, and some pregnant women. That was not affected by the expansion that existed in Texas before the Affordable Care Act and continues to exist after. The expansion populations, which were included in some other states, Texas did not go in that direction, but it also does mean that more of those state dollars do go to the people who are in fact truly needy.
But now Texas has like the highest uninsured population in the country because we didn't expand. And also with Medicaid, my son, after he reaches 18, he's 13, he will age out of what is called the Medically Dependent Children's Program in Texas. And he's on 3 different wait lists. His largest number for his wait list is 65,471. And do you know how many years most of these people have been on wait lists? Like over 14, 17 years. So, you know, what happens? What happens to a family that has been waiting for that long? I have a friend who also has been waiting for many, many years. I moved here from out of state and 3 years ago, and we were on a wait list for 8 years in a different state, and I had to reapply and all over again. So what I'm trying to point out, there's a lot of inconsistencies, and it scares me every night. This is what keeps me awake at night.
So
so as a doctor, I want to know what you will do as a congressman
in your situation.
Yes.
Let me just
Thank
say that there are sometimes things that you can do to help, and I do have people on staff who are, if you are willing to provide me a privacy waiver, we can investigate that on for your particular situation, and we do that all the time.
Sure. I guess I don't know exactly what you mean by that in terms of getting him closer to getting off of the wait list?
To find out what help is available. And again, that's certainly something that we do all the time.
Okay. Thank you.
And Dr. Burgess, right now, this line will probably take us through past 8 o'clock, so. I don't want it to fall out. Yes. There you go.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Let's pretend this is a civics class and you're the teacher, and I've got some things I'm confused about. And I'm sincere in this because I don't understand the role that regulations play as far as legislators go. My understanding is that regulations are there to either protect people or make for fairness in dealing amongst businesses and consumers and all. And my question has to do with how you stand on regulations in general as far as safety goes, OSHA, clean air, clean water, and if this is something that your party is especially opposed to, and if so, what's the motivation?
Well, I would answer in the negative as to being opposed. I mean, regulations, as you know, Congress writes the laws, the executive branch enforces the laws, and the agencies in the executive branch are charged with writing the regulations that they believe are specified in the laws that are passed and signed into law. It's not a question of being for or against regulations in general, but there are times where the regulatory bodies seem to be particularly aggressive, and when that happens, it obviously has a downstream effect on the economy, business, jobs. I mean, there are a number of things that are affected. But to answer your question as being pro or anti-regulation, regulations that are good and fair and applied equally, good enough.
What do you think is the motivation of agencies that you say over-regulate? I mean, how does it benefit an agency to over-regulate? Do they get some kickback or some?
I hope they don't, but it is I don't think there's any question that there have been examples of agencies that have been aggressive in their regulatory authority. The EPA does come to mind.
Like Scott Pruitt?
Well, Scott Pruitt is no longer working at the EPA, so we can debate Scott Pruitt if you like.
No.
He's past history.
Thank God.
Yes, sir. Point that up. So there you go.
Thank
Good
you.
for you.
Hi, I teach actually AP government here in the district, so I have several of my students in the crowd, and both former and upcoming. I have a couple of questions, and I'll make them very brief so I don't feel guilty about that. One, what is your sense of the lay of the land as far as ongoing efforts to go ahead and restrict the influence of special interest groups in Congress? I mean, how do you feel about, for instance, term limits? How do you feel about closing the revolving door? That sort of thing.
First, on term limits, I am 100% in favor of term limits for the United States Senate. Your House member who stands for re-election every 2 years, the founders in their wisdom gave us a pretty short term. So it's a pretty short leash, probably a good idea since we are the branch of the government that has the ability to lay and raise your taxes. So that is, I think that's by design of the founders, and I think that is reasonable. If there were term limits on the House side, and if that's the rule, obviously I will play by the rules. But I mean, I do feel that anytime I stray from what the wishes of the district are, they've got an immediate and pretty final remedy to say, we're not sending you again. I mean, that's just a fact of life.
Yeah, sure, but there are about 150 people in here, and how many people are in the district? I mean, the level of attention, the level of attentiveness is
710,000 people were that was the apportionment at the last reapportionment that the legislature did. So probably 500,000 voting age, 400,000 to 500,000 voting age in every congressional district.
all right. So as you know, the one way to initiate amendments is through the House.
And just to finish that thought, the last election, the 2016 election for Congress for the 26th district, there were over 300,000 people that voted. So it was a pretty good representative sample.
Okay, but less than half.
No. As far as the voting age population,
voting age population.
it was more than half.
Okay. And would you be in favor of a move by the House to initiate a 28th Amendment that would actually go ahead and impose term limits on either the House or the Senate or both?
My experience has been that those term limits are imposed by the voters, by the electorate. But again, whatever the rules are, I'll play by the rules. That's a given.
But you can make the rules.
Yeah, and I think the rules as the founders designed them, in my opinion, are working.
But the president had term limits imposed upon him.
Correct.
Congress, I think, is incredibly reluctant to go ahead and accept the same constraints.
The president's and you know this, the president's a much different position and a much more powerful position. But as your humble House member, who, of course, everyone has two senators, but they've only got one House member, so I would argue the House member is more important, but don't tell the senators that. We can argue the point back and forth, but the fact of the matter is there are not term limits on members of the United States House of Representatives, but I feel very acutely that the people who vote us in can vote us out, and that is why part of the whole communication strategy that I employ, coming to interact with you tonight, that is part of that strategy, and that's why I hold to that.
Okay. Just related to your point, and I'll go ahead and take this one sitting down, related to your point with regard to the fact that the House is the one where taxes originate, the chamber where taxes originate, I want to know your thoughts on the $1 trillion deficit spending amount that we've gone ahead and incurred with relation to the tax cuts that we were passed in the fall.
Well, interestingly enough, the Congressional Budget Office just recalculated. It's only been 6 months, bear in mind. So it's been a pretty short time frame. But the calculation by the Congressional Budget Office was that 1.1 or to 1.12 trillion dollars was in fact covered by the increased revenue that are generated by the economic activity that has resulted from the tax policy. So again, we can argue it back and forth. Right now, I'll stand behind the decision I made. Yes. Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Russ Fuller. Sir,
Hi, Russ.
in the last 15 years, I've watched businesses slowly take away things like pensions and substantial funding for retirees' medical care. I have not seen that happen with the Senate or the Congress, and I'm wondering when that's going to happen.
In terms,
well, if you serve 6 terms, you get full retirement, full medical. Yeah, it's 12 years, right?
No.
Well, your retirement.
I'm required to pay into the FERS, the Federal Employee Retirement System. It was not a choice that I had. I was required.
Yeah, as the rest of us are to pay into ours.
Well, but I also pay into Social Security. So the primary retirement vehicle for me as a member of Congress is Social Security.
And what is your contribution relative to your potential?
Same as yours for Social Security.
No. I mean for your retirement. For your retirement.
For my retirement, fortunately for me, I took care of a lot of that while I was a practicing physician, and I put away a significant amount of money every year. I don't know what the answer to your question. There is the Federal Employee Retirement System that every other federal employee receives. As far as the health care benefit, I mean, I'm straight up Medicare.
What will your retirement be if you spend 12 years at $175,000 a year or something like that?
I don't know the answer to that.
No. Well, I would appreciate it if you take a look at it, because from my understanding of the situation, the congressmen and the senators get tremendous.
It's about 1%, a little over 1% of your salary.
I paid 6.
No, but
30 years I worked.
But
6.
What do you mean you paid 6?
I paid 6% of my income.
No, the retirement draw, I think, was what you were talking about. It is what 1% of your congressional salary times the number of years that you serve. So I mean, it is there. It's obviously not an insignificant amount of money, but it is far from a generous retirement benefit. Again, I prefer much more what I did for myself when I was in the private sector.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
I have a question. Actually, the first person who came asked it, but it was never really answered. But it's something that's very near and dear to me, is the pre-existing condition clause that, from what I understand, is supposed to go away. I'm a 2-year breast cancer survivor, and I am terrified that next year I will no longer be able to either have or afford insurance. And so obviously that's, if it were to come back, then what am I going to do? I mean, the cost of chemo and treatment is outrageous. If we didn't have insurance, and we still had to pay out a lot of out-of-pocket. So I would like to know, as my congressman right now, what are you going to do to make sure that not only pre-existing conditions are covered, but that our premiums, that the insurance companies cannot be allowed to raise our premiums as well because of that? I mean, it was not our fault we were sick.
No, they're not raising it because of that. They're just raising them. So everyone's.
But you make the rules, right? You make the rules.
Everyone's premiums are going up a lot. As far as the pre-existing conditions, I mean, that protection is not going away. Certainly, anyone in the large group market, in the ERISA market, pre-existing conditions have really never been a problem because they've always been covered. Now, the insurance may be expensive and the copays may be expensive, but I think the good news is that more people are covered in the large group market now than really at any time in the past. So that's a positive development that has occurred. As far as in the individual market, protections for pre-existing conditions are not going away. There are some things that are being looked at as how do you expand the amount of insurance coverage and keep it affordable. Some of the things we did last week in the House as far as expansion of health savings accounts. I'd like to see the deductible that someone has available to them to put away in a health savings account. I'd like to see that at least equal to the deductible at the bronze or silver level in the individual market.
I'd like to see the government provide more. I mean, we don't need there's a lot of things we don't need that we're paying for. The government's being threatened to shut down for a wall, but yet we've got how many uninsured Americans? We can't afford it. We don't make your salary. I don't make what you make. And I just have one last comment and kind of a question in regards to, you said you're the part of the legislature, you make the rules. Well, I know when we first, our founding fathers created everything, we didn't have the number of amendments that we did. And some of those new amendments changed an old amendment. And by the very definition of amendment, it means it can be changed.
Right.
So why do we hide behind, well, that's our amendment, and we're not going to change it? I
don't think anyone's hiding behind an amendment.
Well, you kind of mentioned it with the gentleman before, the AP history teacher or government teacher, who was saying, well, will there be a 28th amendment, 28th, am I correct? 28th amendment of you to change something? And you said basically no, because that was not for.
If I supported it, and the answer is I think what we have now is working perfectly well.
Okay, well, we'll agree to disagree.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, before I get to my main question, I want to point out that you did say that you supported it for the Senate. So technically you could implement the 28th Amendment to limit terms if it was strictly applied to the Senate. But now I'm actually to my main questions. First,
you do know that the amendment process requires that it pass by a 2/3 majority in the House and the Senate.
Yeah.
So probably not likely that the Senate is going to vote themselves that. But
well, if they had any
please
sense of
proceed.
responsibility. But during your term, this most recent term, you took almost $600,000 from healthcare-related PACs. And during this term, you've also voted time and time again on measures that have been pushed by the administration and Congress to repeal and potentially replace the Affordable Care Act. As a medical doctor, you took the Hippocratic Oath to uphold patient care and their well-being. My question to you is, how can you, as a medical doctor, for many years past, and many years more than you were a congressman, vote in complete favor of policies that would take away healthcare from hundreds upon thousands, if not millions of Americans, and just leave patients in a worse off position than they would be with these healthcare options that they have?
Well, to start with, I don't think the Affordable Care Act has necessarily left some people in a better position. I hear from people all the time who tell me that I'm functionally uninsured. I have a policy that I pay a lot of money for. I have a deductible that is sky high. And the example that is given is a kidney stone at 3 o'clock in the morning. Someone who's got a $6,800 deductible on their insurance. They go to the emergency room for help because it's the worst pain they've ever had in their life. They get taken care of, and then the next thing they know, they get a $4,800 bill that they have to pay. That's on top of paying the $700, $800, $900 individual premium every month for the bronze plan that they have. Their out-of-pocket expenses are through the roof. People want different options. People want different choices. So, I mean, I do hear from people on that side of the equation all the time. Just as I don't do a lot of polling, but just as a point of interest for the 26th district, the repeal the Affordable Care Act question still is in excess of 60%.
Okay, I'm just gonna be real. I think that's the PAC money talking, not the medical doctor.
No, wait a minute, wait a minute.
Let me finish. Recently, within the last day or two, the Koch brothers actually put out a poll, or they did some research that showed that the Medicare for All option would actually save Americans $300 billion total over the course of the next 10 years. As a Republican and as a member of the party of fiscal responsibility, wouldn't you believe that the option that ensures the most and costs the less would be the best option?
Well, number one, there's obviously competing data out there, and there's another study that said Medicare for All over the next 10 years would cost $32 trillion. So that doesn't sound like a saver to me. But we can have that discussion, we can have that debate, and perhaps it's a good debate to have. Let me just tell you the reality, and I deal with the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services all the time. I deal with their regulations all the time. It is one of the most onerous things that people have to go through is what is in fact covered by these policies and what is not. As a provider, where am I going to be reimbursed, and what is that reimbursement going to amount to? So these are very real problems that exist within the system as it is today. Expanding the system, I don't know if that is the correct answer, but I will tell you this. Look, if someone told me that they really believe single payer is the way to go and we just got to get it done and I want with all my heart for that to happen, then wouldn't you move heaven and earth to make sure the VA functioned properly?
You're dodging the question.
No, I'm not dodging the question. There is your government-run healthcare system. And there was an opportunity with the VA Mission Act a little earlier this year to try to improve some things in the VA system, and it was blocked. It was blocked by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer because they had some other competing influence that they wanted to push. They wanted to push ahead of that. I would argue that if you wanted Medicare for all or you wanted a single payer system, you'd move heaven and earth to make the VA work, and you certainly would not let the Indian Health Service continue to look the way it does.
Well, under a Medicare for All or single payer system, there wouldn't really be a need for a VA or an Indian healthcare system because it would be provided under the entire Medicare for All lump.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Well, we disagree on that, but I don't think the requirement for a VA system would go away.
Well, I mean, in terms of providing health care, of course, there would still need to be, VA benefits in other areas, but in terms of health care providing, it would just be through a single payer system.
Yeah, I'm skeptical.
PAC money.
Look, I will address that part, because most of the larger healthcare PACs have not been in favor of some of the things that I've been working toward. Certainly the hospitals did they want the repeal and replace? No, because they're doing pretty well under the current system. The insurance companies, did they want the repeal and replace we're talking about? No, they're doing pretty well under the current system. So that that's a cop-out to say that, and you're better than that. And I didn't take a single penny from labor unions, so there.
My name is Kate Lindsay, and I live in Denton. I'm a retired operating room nurse of over 40 years. I've written you numerous times, and you do respond, and I do thank you for having town hall meetings, because there are many representatives and congressmen in Texas who don't. My issue this evening, I just want to raise a question. Tonight at midnight, it will be possible to print 3D guns.
I don't think that's actually correct.
Well, I understand that there has been an injunction or something put, but
Correct.
It is still out there, and I know that they've already downloaded some blueprints. However, I also know that the president came out today in a tweet and said, well, maybe it wasn't such a good idea to have 3D guns. You take money from the president, campaign money. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on 3D guns. As a physician, I've worked in the operating room and I've seen the results of gun activity.
Right, but those probably weren't 3D guns.
I think that's unfair
Well,
to say that because I raised the issue about the future. We're not debating all the other gun issues. I'm raising the issue only in relationship to the future of 3D guns, understanding that they now have printers that can do this with metal, not just plastic. I understand that the 3D printers, it would take thousands of dollars worth. It's not your little $300 3D printer that we purchase for our grandchildren at Christmas. Okay, I understand a lot of those things. I'm asking from a physician perspective, as my representative in the House, do you think 3D guns are a wise thing for our future?
Well, I think we'll see a significant amount of debate on this, and I suspect there'll be a number of congressional hearings. Right now, there are First Amendment issues, there are Second Amendment issues. There are not, with the Ninth Circuit Court stay, it's not something that necessarily needs to be decided in the next couple of days, but I think it is something where Congress is going to have to look at the issue and come up with an answer. I'm undecided at this point. I see that there are First Amendment issues and Second Amendment issues. I think the discussion about the cost of the equipment to produce this is, that is a significant barrier. At the same time, we all know technology improves with time, and there is likely to be a day where the cost barrier would not be as significant. So I think it is something that deserves study. Yes, sir.
Hello, Congressman Burgess. My name is George. I'm from Fort Worth. And I would like, first of all, to commend you for your great immigration stance. I believe that Numbers USA gives you an A, which is excellent, much better than most. I just like to know, and thank you. And I also like to tell you that we also, many people support this great president. He has revolutionized the Republican Party. He has revolutionized the United States. He's not like George Bush. He's not like Obama. He's not like old Bush. He's not even like Reagan. Reagan gave an amnesty. This is one of my questions. Reagan gave an amnesty in 1986, I believe. And he said that a border wall would be built and all kinds of E-Verify would take place. Nothing took place. Since then, I don't know how many amnesties we had. I didn't research it, but one thing I do know is that every year we're having approximately 400,000 anchor babies born in the United States. Do you support congressmen? I believe there are some congressmen who say the definition of the 14th Amendment does not include two illegals giving birth to a legal person here in the United States. And I disagree with that totally, because they are subject to the jurisdiction of another power, another nation. I'd just like to know, first of all, how you feel on that.
Well, and that's been the debate on the 14th Amendment. I will tell you that that's a very sympathetic population, and that's a pretty tall order to remove that birthright citizenship that people have come to expect. So I'm trying to be honest with you.
Right.
That is a tough one. Now, there are some other things that we probably can do and should do. I am concerned about the 15,000 unaccompanied minors coming across the border every month. That is it is difficult it's a difficult management problem. It is no question that there are people that profit off of that, traffickers and coyotes who ship those children up here through the deserts of Mexico. That is not a safe activity, and I do not recommend that anyone embark on that type of journey. At the same time, once those children arrive in this country, we do have a responsibility to see that they're taken care of. Right now, it is the burden. It is the burden of having to take care of 13 or 14,000 a month. That's what's breaking the bank right now. That agency is under the jurisdiction of the health subcommittee that I chair, so Office of Refugee Resettlement. I talk to them frequently. Have a call into them from later today that I've not yet gotten answered on some things that cropped up in the news media. But I do want to tell you that I've taken probably 10 trips since 2013 down to the generally the Texas border. I don't go into Arizona, New Mexico, California. Right. They've got their own members who can do that. My impression is at the level of Office of Refugee and Resettlement, things have improved a lot in the last several years, but the primary difficulty, the sheer volume of children that they're being asked to deal with remains unchecked, and that is fundamentally what we're going to have to deal with. The president has had an interesting discussion the past couple of days that he'll veto any spending bill that doesn't include his funding, and I think
I hope you support that.
Well, there's a couple of takeaways from my perspective. Number one, we should not be doing our appropriations bills as a single jolt of the omnibus bills. And if there's one beef that Numbers USA has with me is I have voted for some omnibus bills in the past, and they did contain a number of H-2B visa provisions in them that Numbers USA does not like. And I agree with them about that. At the same time, it was a question of not shutting the government down. Now, the president has said he is willing to shut the government down if he doesn't get the funding for his wall. I think part of our answer to that is, as members of Congress, we need to do all 12 of those appropriations bills as single bills and send them to the president for his signature or not. And if there's one or two or more of those that he wants to say, I'm not signing this because you did not give me enough, probably the Homeland Security Appropriations Bill would be the place that would occur. If there is not the requisite number of dollars in that bill, then he may very well hold that back. I would not like to see the Department of Defense held hostage to the border wall in the Department of Homeland Security. If we do a big omnibus bill, then that's the only choice you have. It's all or nothing. It's a 1 and a 0. So my hope is that we will do the appropriations bills individually, and then the president can certainly tell us this was not good enough, go back and rework it, and that's his prerogative.
Well, second question I have to ask you,
Sure.
I'm kind of a history buff myself, and I realized that years and years ago, we used to have a different immigration program. It required pauses in between these massive influxes of people. Right now, we're having nonstop, and I believe that Joe Biden said he wants it to happen nonstop forever. You know, this can't be sustained, and I just want to say that I disagree with DACA, and I hope you do, and I disagree with any type of amnesty. We saw where that got us in 1986, and all I have to say is my final point is build that wall.
Okay.
Thank you.
Message received. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Yes, sir.
Congressman Burgess, thank you for listening to me tonight.
Sure.
I'm a retired teacher coach.
Good for you.
And my name is David Hatcher.
Hi, David.
And my concern is catastrophic healthcare. I'm going this week, Friday, to pay $1,100 for my medication. I missed 5 days of school in 31 years. And I acquired CML. And that drug is $13,000 a month. In my coaching career, I made $9,800 my first year, not $13,000 a month. Insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, and pharmacies make way too much money. I personally feel like I have been betrayed by the state of Texas because of the healthcare situation. I am one of those people that got caught up in the 65 and under. So I am paying out the nose. And I will end up paying over $600 a month for that medication. And my question to you is, how can we fix that?
Well, you know, you've raised several important points, and just let me kind of start where I ended up with someone else. if there is something that our office can do to help you, we would get involved in that. And if you will, Eric is right behind you. He can direct you to Melanie Torres, who, if you'll sign a privacy waiver, we can make an inquiry on your behalf as to what other help might be available for you.
Okay.
The other question, though, do you mind me saying what CML stands for?
It's chronic
myelogenous leukemia.
Leukemia, yes.
So it's a type of leukemia.
Yes,
and
take a pill a day. Got one in my pocket that's $550.
And the medication, is that Gleevec?
No, sir, it's Bosiliff.
Okay. And this is relatively new. So the good news is there is a medication that you can take by mouth to keep this condition at bay. And at some point, hopefully for you, you beat it entirely.
Yes.
But you...
it's a disease that basically you had to take the pill the rest of your life. Yeah. However, my leukemia doctor told me that the trend now is if you can go 2 years at 0, that you can be removed from that medication. I've been on it for 5 years.
Okay.
And the medication and the insurance at that time was affordable, but Texas has changed that. And when they did, they killed me. I cannot afford this medication. And I went from 48.9% of my cells bad to now I'm in what they call molecular remission.
Good
and I'm at 0.33, 33 thousandths. And so at that point, I only have a couple of options. One of those is to divorce my wife of 41 years, because if I do that, then I meet a criteria to get me the medication. But I'm not going to divorce my wife because she's good to me.
I get it. So again, let us see what we can do to help you. But to the broader question, how do you control drug prices at the same time, keep innovation and keep America at the forefront of innovation? And that is the challenge, and that has been the struggle. The committee that I'm on, we did a drug supply chain hearing in December where we had 11 witnesses, and we had pharma, and we had the insurance companies, and we had the PBMs, the pharmacy benefit managers, and the scientists, and the patient rights groups, all there, so that no one could say, well, it's so-and-so's problem, because so-and-so was sitting just to the left of them, and so-and-so then would have their say on the issue as well. And it turns out the problem is multifactorial now. Some people look at that and do say the simple solution should just be, well, let's control the price. But you are probably old enough to remember when Jimmy Carter tried that with gasoline prices.
Yes.
And we all sat in a long line. And with your illness, the last thing you want is to not have the access to the medication that you need. So somehow we need to balance those two competing priorities, and they are priorities. But I think the list prices as set by pharma is certainly something that needs to be looked at. And you've seen the rhetoric coming out of the White House. The president talked about it in his State of the Union message.
Yes.
And he has put a good deal of pressure on the people who set the list prices at pharma. The counter to that has been, well, the PBMs are taking too big a cut. And then on top of everything else, you have the market distorting rebates that are required that people pay. And so no one really knows what anyone pays for anything anymore. So it is a complex problem.
I know what I pay.
I know. Well, let us see if we can help you individually. And I will say that this is something where I continue to concentrate. One of the issues that was brought up, should the FDA require in the direct-to-consumer advertising that goes on television, should they require, you obviously have to disclose the side effects, and sometimes those can be significant. Maybe you also ought to disclose the price, so that people can make a value decision based on cost or price at that time. One of the other things is the One of the ways that the Affordable Care Act was set up with the large rebate that was required under Medicaid does allow the list price for the non-Medicaid market to be set quite high. And maybe it's time that that were looked at again as well. So those are a couple of things that I'm working on right now.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Congressman, thanks for being here.
Sure.
My name is Steve Smith.
Hi, Steve.
Those of you interested in term limits, there's a movement across the country, Convention of States, and one of their amendments they're recommending is term limits. You might look at Convention of States. I second.
May I speak to that since you brought it up?
Please do. Yeah, please do.
I mean, certainly in this type of format for the past several years, this issue of the Convention of States has come up. I guess my question is, who's going to be James Madison this time? I mean, we were in many ways very fortunate at the founding of this country that some very bright people were involved in the crafting of those documents. I am worried about the opening up of the process does entail a certain amount of risk as well. And I would just say that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I second the anchor baby issue as well. And I love President Trump. Congressman, there's a thought of having congressional committees choose their own chairman. What is your opinion on that? I've got a two-part question.
It'd be fine with me.
Okay.
You know how it's done now.
Yeah, kind of from the top down and.
Well, no, there is a committee, you know, it's kind of funny. It's a committee on committees. It's called the steering committee. So Republicans have theirs, Democrats have theirs, and that's how not just the chair, but every member of the committee is chosen as every term of Congress is organized. The steering committee meets and makes those assignments. Yes, usually they start with the chairman. Another way to approach that would be to name the committee members and then let the committee members vote on the chairman. You understand the perceived, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but the perceived risk from the person who is the Speaker of the House or Majority Leader or Minority Leader on the minority side. Obviously, they see a risk in that strategy.
What do you think of it? Do you think the committee people understand who the best chairman potentially could be?
You know, my bias when I arrived at Congress was I was going to do the very best job I possibly could because I thought things would be based on merit. I was disappointed several times to learn that was not the case, but thanks to the people of the 26th district who's sent me back enough time to get enough seniority. Now it is on the subcommittee level, at least. Yes, I do hold a gavel, and I would not have a problem of throwing that open to the members of the subcommittee. I think they would reaffirm that decision. We've had a good working relationship between myself and the members of the subcommittee.
Great. The second part of the question then would be, would you support Jim Jordan for Speaker? Or how do you feel about Jim Jordan?
Well, I mean, he's a good guy, and obviously he's a straight shooter. The problem I have right now is that, well, let me just back up a little. I would never have believed when Speaker Ryan made his announcement that would be at the end of July, the 1st of August, with that situation being unresolved. I always thought that nature's abhorrence of a vacuum would apply to the Speaker's office as well, and I was wrong. So I guess my question to anyone who now says I'd like to be Speaker is, well, number one, I want to sit down and talk to you about it and talk about some things that I've seen during my tenure that I might like to see work a little differently or work a little better. But I would also say, where were you when this announcement was first made? Tom DeLay told me several years ago that you know, there's nothing uglier than having a leadership election in the middle of a term. On the other hand, I don't think he ever could have envisioned that a speaker would say, I'm not coming back at the end of this year, and there not be some sort of activity done to replace it. Not speaking against Speaker Ryan, but just that would have been my assumption. Again, that nature abhors a vacuum, and Congress is no different than anyone else. I'm happy to talk to Jim Jordan about his plans. Obviously, I'll talk to anyone else. There has been some discussion that there may be someone from the Texas delegation who would aspire to that role. And obviously, as a member of the Texas delegation, I've got to listen to that very seriously as well.
You're talking about the process, and yes, it's unbelievable that Ryan sits in that seat, a lame duck. It's just unbelievable. But that set aside, I mean, we see Jim Jordan performing admirably, in my opinion. I mean, he's honest. He does what he says he's going to do. And do you have a comment about Jim's leadership? I mean, quite honestly, he's a leader.
I guess I wondered why he did not make that decision almost immediately after the announcement was made that there would be a vacancy in the Speaker's office.
Well, I'd have to tell you, he had us all on the phone. Anybody who's part of the Freedom Caucus, national phone call within a week or two of that announcement. We were all lauding him and imploring him to step out and announce. And he, for some reason, I don't know what the politics are, but he held back. And I think he was waiting to see.
Well, and here's the other part of that equation, with all respect to everything you've said, and I do respect it. Right now, we don't know if the Republicans are going to control the majority and be electing the Speaker next time. It may be the Democrats. So at this point, as we sit here on the 1st of August, the end of July, the 1st of August, probably premature to talk about a Speaker's race. We all need to do our work, make sure we turn in a good work product for the rest of this term. And if the Republicans return to the majority, by golly, we'll have something to talk about.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And Dr. Burgess, we're at 8 o'clock right now. If you're okay, we'll
Yeah.
take the last two.
Yes.
Thank you. And
Yes,
for
sir.
everyone's sake, I'll be pretty quick.
Sure.
But thank you for coming and taking this. I don't know that I could do your job, but thank you for taking
Yeah,
these
you could.
questions and being so
Yeah,
educated.
you could. I've got all kinds of faith in you.
I appreciate that. One of the things that seems to just go by and no one seems to care about it, but I think it's creating a lot of funding for the things that are problems for us, is identity theft.
Mhm.
And no one seems to be bothered by it. It just seems to go on. It's unregulated. Nobody can stop them. I get phone calls, 2 since I've been standing in line, from phony phone numbers. And and I register my phone number. I've got to tell the company who I am and what I am. And it's amazing to me that these companies or scammers can call me on a fake phone number and the phone company doesn't care about it. I keep blocking them. I'm thinking they're going to run out of phone numbers that I can't block one day soon.
No, it's infinity.
Yeah, something like that. But I would love that Congress would address enforcing identity theft in every area it's happening, in insurance, in phones, and every other way that it is, because we got to hold the line there, because I think that money is funding other things. I don't know if you have an answer for that or not. I have 2 other quick points I want to make for you.
Go ahead.
And one of them is, I think there's a lot of things that nobody understands about our President Trump. And he has continued to prove that people have predicted that he's going to do this or he's going to cause this problem. And yet he has turned around and done just the opposite effect. Everybody thought he was going to go to World War III with Korea, and that has not happened. In fact, it looks like it's much opposite of that. So I would just encourage you that whatever President Trump is doing and he puts out there, there may be some problems, there may be some temporary pain. We may have a government shutdown for a while, but I think that'll be temporary compared to the long-term effect. And if he says he's not going to sign the bill and we have a shutdown, I want to build that wall, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And sir, on your other question, we actually can get you some information on the Federal Trade Commission. I mean, I turn those numbers in, and Jane can help you with that. I mean, it is a question of whacking those people every time that they pull one of those scams. So the Federal Trade Commission actually does have, they have people that's their job. That's what they do.
Well, I thank you. One of the things that really gets me is there's this statement out there that says, if you see something, say something.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? I went through 2 days when I saw something I thought was very suspicious. And I went through 2 days going to trying to call somebody, and they said, well, wait a minute, are you making a judgment call on this person now? Are you being critical of somebody? Because I said, no, I really saw something. And so it's not easy to say something. We need to make it easier.
Yes, I don't disagree.
To do that process.
I don't disagree with you. Yes, sir.
Sir, one last question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'll try to be quick.
Sure.
Thank you. The one thing I wanted to get to say tonight, if nothing else,
Yes, sir.
was to say thank you. I am proud to have you as my representative.
You're very kind.
And your staff, your office staff has been helpful to me in the past. They are
So you can have as much time as you want.
So
I yield you another 20 minutes.
So anyway, thank you. But I just wanted to share my thoughts as your constituent. I wanted to express my support for President Trump and the tariffs. I think that the world order needs to be disrupted, not destroyed, but disrupted. And I also wanted to express my support for immigration enforcement and the wall. And we do need immigration reform. There are problems.
Yes, sir.
So, and I'll get my daughter's point in here real quick.
Sure.
She couldn't be here tonight. She's in school. She aspires to be a choir teacher, and she would like to see more funding for the arts.
Tell her we're all proud of what she's doing.
Thank you.
And that she got a standing ovation when you brought that up. You can stretch the truth a little bit.
Yeah. So anyway, she'd like to see more funding for the arts, and I can attest that having 2 children who went through the fine arts programs, we paid between $1,000 and $2,000 per student per year for them to participate in those arts because they're not well funded.
Yes, sir.
So, and then for my thing, I'd like many others here, just to address a little bit of concerns about healthcare. I think we have one of the most excellent healthcare systems in the world in practice. I do not think we have a good healthcare system in administration. Because I feel it. I've felt it several times. I absolutely do not support single payer or Medicare for all. The VA is the perfect example why not. But I would support single biller because every time I go to the ER or to the hospital, I get no less than 5 bills. And I don't know who half these people are. So it would be nice if I went to the hospital or to the ER, as I had to do 3 weeks ago. When I contract with a hospital or a healthcare provider, that I deal with them, not 5 other people. Let them handle all the billing. And if there's any question, I can work with them instead, because they just passed me off to somebody else. I said, well, you'll have to talk to so-and-so, or you'll have to call these people. And the other thing is when I contract with somebody for some health care, I would like to know that they're going to use providers, if they're going to farm it out, that stay in my network, because then I get people that aren't in my network and my insurance doesn't want to pay. And that's a real problem.
It is a problem, and sometimes you have no control over that.
It's 3 o'clock in the morning at the ER and my wife's doubled over in pain. I really don't care. I just want her to be taken care of.
Sure. And if the anesthesiologist that then is involved is not in your network, then the bill becomes a significant barrier.
Exactly. And insurance should not second guess my doctor.
I don't.
And I know you appreciate that.
I'm on board with you.
When we've worked through several medications and we find the one that works for me, I don't want my insurance company to change it on me.
Yeah,
and
it's called step therapy, and that's practicing medicine without a license, as far as I'm concerned, on the insurance company's part.
Agreed. So we do need some improvements in our healthcare, and I don't know how you fix that. And I don't know how you fix the ridiculous drug prices. but please keep up the good fight.
All right. Thank
We're
you.
counting on you.
Thank you. I don't know how I'll stop you.
The thing I think that really bothers a lot of folks here, this lady with a sick child, this lady with breast cancer, these problems should have been handled 20 years ago. Congress, as far as I'm concerned, and the leadership of this country for the last 20 or 30 years has done very little to solve these problems. And that's why these people are frustrated. That's why I'm frustrated. I'm a diehard conservative. And you've got some of these youngsters that are utopian. Once you get into the real world, it changes. But Congress has to start doing its job. During session.
All right, we'll let that be the closing comment. And once again, I want to thank everyone for coming this evening. I do have a couple of interns that I just want to mention. Madison Crow, and I don't know where she's sitting, has helped us this evening, and Dawson Holder. Madison is at Baylor, and Dawson's at Grapevine Christian School. So thanks to those two youngsters who work for low pay. Okay, it's no pay, but and they don't work for me; they work for you. And they're getting good experience this summer. We appreciate them. We appreciate them doing that. And I'm going to adjourn at this point. Thanks for coming. I'll be around for a little bit. People want to talk. Thanks, Jim.
Places I've been around the world. If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today.